for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. I'm Darren Gibson, your host today. Looks like there's going to be presidential debates, two of them, one in June, one in September. The first one is going to be hosted by CNN on June 27th without an audience. That ought to be real interesting. ABC hosts the second one on September 10th. We'll give you more details about that as we continue into the show. The Prime Minister of Slovakia has been shot in an assassination attempt. We will talk to you about that. Oh boy, Donald Trump is trying to make excuses for Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. Yes, the dog-killing. I can't believe it. He's going to try and save her. I don't know. We have a double Hammer Time Award segment this week, plus lots more to discuss. Before we get into today's topics, a couple of reminders. You can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on X at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube and Mastodon by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Podcast Addict, Podvine, and Pandora by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, X, Tumblr, YouTube, and Mastodon accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KCGM in Kabul, Missouri, and KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas. So be sure to listen to us on your local Pacifica affiliate. We're recording the show on Thursday, May 16th, 2024. It is the morning of May 16th. It's nice and sunny up here in West Michigan. Hopefully it is wherever you are. Right now, let's get to our very first story. Yes, presidential debates are going to happen. This is Josh Bullock, Zeke Miller, and Jill Colvin writing for the Associated Press. This is dated May 15th out of Washington. President Joe Biden and Donald Trump on Wednesday agreed to hold two campaign debates, the first on June 27th hosted by CNN, the second on September 10th hosted by ABC, setting the stage for their first presidential face-off to play out in just over a month. The quick agreement on the timetable followed the Democrats' announcement that he would not participate in fall presidential debates sponsored by the nonpartisan commission that has organized them for more than 3 decades. Biden's campaign instead proposed that media outlets directly organize the debates between the presumptive Democratic and Republican nominees. The debate is so unusually early on the political calendar that neither Biden nor Trump will have formally accepted his party's nomination. Hours later, Biden said he had accepted an invitation from CNN, adding, quote, "Over to you, Donald," end of quote. Trump, who has insisted that he would debate Biden anytime, any place, said on Truth Social he'd be there too, adding, quote, "Let's get ready to rumble," end of quote. The only thing that's going to be rumbling is Donald Trump's stomach, and you might pass some gas too. Soon after that, they agreed to the second debate on ABC. Biden wrote on X, quote, "Trump says he'll arrange his own transportation. I'll bring my plane too. I plan on keeping it for another 4 years, end of quote. I love it. I love it. This is great stuff. I believe Biden also said, "Make my day," and that was pretty funny too. Go ahead, make my day. The swiftness with which the matchups came together reflects how each of the two unpopular candidates thinks he can get the better of his opponent in a head-to-head showdown. Trump and his team are convinced the debates will exacerbate voters' concerns about Biden's age and competence, While Biden's team believes Trump's often incendiary rhetoric will remind voters of why they voted him out of the White House 4 years ago. The presidential debate's always a critical moment on the political calendar. Could be particularly important in a year when voters are underwhelmed with their choices and have expressed concerns about the candidates' advanced ages. Biden is 81, Trump is 77. Sprightly on social media, the rivals traded barbs, each claiming victory the last time they faced off in 2020. In a post on X, Biden said, quote, Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. Since then, he hasn't shown up for a debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. End of quote. That's great. Trump, for his part, said that Biden was, quote, the worst debater I have ever faced. He can't put 2 sentences together. End of quote. Really? Yeah. Donnie only wishes that Biden can only put 2 sentences together. The June debate is likely to cap a busy and unsettled stretch following the likely conclusion of Trump's criminal hush money trial in New York, foreign trips by Biden to France and Italy, the end of the Supreme Court's term, and the expected start of 2 criminal trials for Hunter Biden, the president's son. CNN said that this debate would be held at 9 p.m. Eastern in its Atlanta studios with no audience present and a break from recent precedent. Moderators will be anchors Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, according to CNN. ABC did not offer details on where its event would be held. Disagreements about moderators and rules were some of the questions that prompted the formation of the Commission on Presidential Debates in 1987. The 2 campaigns and television networks had held weeks of informal talks on ways to circumvent the Commission's grip on presidential debates, following years of complaints and perceived slights, according to 2 people familiar with the matter who spoke about internal discussions on the condition of anonymity. Biden's campaign had proposed excluding third-party candidates such as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from the debates outright. Under the Debate Commission's rules, Kennedy or other third-party candidates could qualify if they secured ballot access sufficient to claim 270 electoral votes and polled at 15% or higher in a selection of national surveys. Both CNN and ABC announced the same qualification threshold, saying candidates will need to reach at least 15% in 4 separate national polls of registered or likely voters that meet their standards. In response, Kennedy accused Biden and Trump of, quote, trying to exclude me from their debate because they are afraid I would win. Keeping viable candidates off the debate stage undermines democracy, end of quote. Well, I don't think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is polling anywhere near 15%, so on any national poll. So there you go. Plans for the vice presidential debate have yet to be announced. Trump has been pushing for more and earlier debates, arguing voters should be able to see the 2 men face off well before early voting begins in September. He has even proposed a debate outside the Manhattan courthouse where he is currently on trial. He's also been taunting Biden with an empty lectern at some of his rallies. So Trump is basically pulling a Clint Eastwood with the empty seat, which went over like a fart in church the first time it happened. In a memorandum to Biden campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon on Wednesday, Trump's senior campaign advisors Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles challenged Biden to agree to at least 2 additional debates, suggesting one be held each month with events in June, July, August, and September, in addition to a vice presidential debate. They wrote, quote, additional dates will allow voters to have maximum exposure to the records and future visions of each candidate, end of quote. Trump later posted on Truth Social that he had agreed to a 3rd debate, this one hosted by Fox Propaganda Channel. He wrote, quote, please let this truth serve to represent that I hereby accept debating crooked Joe Biden on Fox Propaganda Channel. The date will be Wednesday, October 2nd. The hosts will be Brett Baer and Martha McCallum. Thank you, DJT. End of quote. Yeah. Crooked Joe Biden on the Fox Propaganda Channel network. They say Fox News. We never refer to Fox as news because they're not news. They never have been. They never will be. They are GOP TV, which was pushed to Nixon back in the late 1960s, and Nixon said it would never work. Well, he was wrong. O'Malley Dillon responded with a statement accusing Trump of having a long history of playing games with debates, complaining about the rules, breaking those rules, pulling out at the last minute, or not showing up at all. She wrote, quote, "No more games, no more chaos, no more debate about debates. We'll see Donald Trump on June 27th in Atlanta if he shows up," end of quote. In an interview with conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt Wednesday morning, Trump had raised his own doubts about whether Biden would show and offered his own suggestions. He said the debates should go 2 hours with both men standing. He also pushed for larger venues. Trump said, quote, "It's just more exciting," end of quote. Biden's campaign has long held a grudge against the nonpartisan commission, accusing it of failing to even apply its rules during the 2020 Biden-Trump matchups, most notably when it didn't enforce its COVID-19 testing rules on Trump and his entourage. O'Malley Dillon on Wednesday sent a letter to the Commission on Presidential Debates to say that Biden's campaign objected to its proposed debate dates in the fall, which would come after some Americans begin to vote, repeating a complaint also voiced by the Trump campaign. She also voiced frustrations over past rule violations and the Commission's insistence on holding the debates before a live audience. She wrote, quote, "The debate should be conducted for the benefit of the American voters, watching on television and at home, not as entertainment for an in-person audience with raucous or disruptive partisans and donors," end of quote. She's got that right. There was also little love lost for the commission from Trump, who objected to technical issues at his first debate with Democrat Hillary Clinton in 2016 and was upset when the 2020 debate with Biden was canceled after the Republican came down with COVID-19. The Republican National Committee had already promised not to work with the commission on the 2024 contests. The Trump campaign issued a statement on May 1st that said of the debate scheduled offered by the commission, quote, "This is unacceptable," end of quote. The commission released a statement Wednesday that read in part, quote, "The American public deserves substantive debates from its leading candidates for president and vice president," end of quote. It continued by saying that its mission is to, quote, "ensure that such debates reliably take place and reach the widest television, radio, and streaming audience," end of quote. Yeah, those shouldn't be streamed. You don't get an audience there. Sorry, you don't. You just don't. I hate to tell you. WWE is going to find that out when they move Raw over to Netflix. They'll find out the hard way. They'll be begging to get out of their contract and go back to USA Network. Because guess what? Not everybody has internet. I got news for you folks. I can't even get internet where I live. I can't even get dial-up. The only option for me is Starlink. And I'm not paying $120 a month for internet. You can forget it. Hopefully somebody comes along and provides fiber optic internet in this area sometime real soon. Hopefully very, very soon. Right now, let's get to some international news. This is Carol Janicek and Bella Zandaletsky writing for the Associated Press. This is dated May 15th out of Banska Bystrica, Slovakia. Listen to this, folks. This was something else. Slovakia's populist Prime Minister Robert Fico was shot multiple times and gravely wounded Wednesday while greeting supporters at an event in an attempted assassination that shocked the small country and reverberated across Europe weeks before an election. Doctors were still fighting for his life several hours after the 59-year-old pro-Russian leader was hit in the abdomen. That's according to Defense Minister Robert Kalina. He said an operation on Fico was not complete and described his condition as, quote, extraordinarily serious, end of quote. 5 shots were fired outside a cultural center in the town of Handlova, nearly 85 miles northeast of the capital, government officials said. Fico was shot while attending a meeting of his government in the town of 16,000 that was once a center of coal mining. Interior Minister Matas Sutaj Estak briefed reporters alongside the defense minister and said that a suspect was in custody and that an initial investigation found a clear political motivation behind the assassination attempt. Kalinak added, quote, "There's no doubt about it," end of quote. Fico has long been a divisive figure in Slovakia and beyond, but his return to power last year on a pro-Russian, anti-American message led to even greater worries among fellow European Union members that he would lead his country further from the Western mainstream. His government halted arms deliveries to Ukraine, and critics worry that he will lead Slovakia, a nation of 5.5 million people that belongs to NATO, to abandon its pro-Western course and follow in the footsteps of Hungary under populist Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Thousands have repeatedly rallied in the capital and across Slovakia to protest Fico's policies. A message posted to Fico's Facebook account said that he was taken to a hospital in Banska Bystrica, 17 miles from Handlova, because it would take too long to get to the capital of Bratislava. The attack comes as political campaigning heats up 3 weeks ahead of Europe-wide elections to choose lawmakers for the European Parliament. Concern is mounting that populists and nationalists similar to Fico can make gains in the 27-member bloc. Outgoing President Zuzana Kapitova, a political rival of Fico, said in a televised statement, quote, "A physical attack on the Prime Minister is first of all an attack on a person, but it is also an attack on democracy. Any violence is unacceptable. The hateful rhetoric we've been witnessing in society leads to hateful actions. Please, let's stop it." End of quote. I'm going to stop right here for a minute. Let me tell you who's been pushing the physical violence and the hateful rhetoric. It hasn't been the left, it's been the right. Period. End of story. Whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Fico, whether it's Putin, whether it's anybody on the right, they're the ones pushing hateful rhetoric. They're the ones that won't stop it. And it started in the 1980s with Rush Limbaugh using the word libtard and feminazi. That's what you get, folks. And it's just escalated from there. And it won't stop. The only way it's going to stop is for people to grow a brain and figure shit out. Really, that's all there is to it. President-elect Peter Pellegrini, an ally of Fico, called the shooting, quote, "an unprecedented threat to Slovak democracy. If we express other political opinions with pistols and squares and not in polling stations, we are jeopardizing everything that we have built together over 31 years of Slovak sovereignty." End of quote. The recent elections that brought Fico and allies to power have underlined deep social divisions. Gabor Zimer, a political journalist at Slovakian news outlet Užizo.com, said the results showed that, quote, "Slovak society was strongly split into two camps," end of quote. One that was friendly toward Russia and another that pushed for stronger connections with the European Union and the West. Zimer said, quote, "At the same time, I couldn't imagine that it would lead to physical violence," end of quote. President Joe Biden said he was alarmed, saying in a statement, quote, "We condemn this horrific act of violence," end of quote. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg posted on the social media platform X that he was shocked and appalled by the attempt on Fico's life, while European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called it a vile attack. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky denounced the violence against a neighboring country's head of government, saying, quote, "Every effort should be made to ensure the violence does not become the norm in any country, form, or sphere," end of quote. Fico, who is in his fourth term and his leftist Smer or Direction Party, won the Slovakia's September 30th parliamentary elections. Leftist. Pro-Russian is not leftist. I got news for you. But politics, as usual, were put aside as the nation faced the shock of the attempt on Fico's life. Slovakia's parliament was adjourned until further notice. The majority opposition parties Progressive Slovakia and Freedom and Solidarity canceled a planned protest against a controversial government plan to overhaul public broadcasting that they say would give the government full control of public radio and television. Progressive Slovakia leader Michael Semenka called on all politicians, quote, "to refrain from any expressions and steps which could contribute to further increasing the tension," end of quote. Czech Prime Minister Peter Fiala wished the premier a swift recovery, saying, quote, "We cannot tolerate violence. There is no place for it in society," end of quote. The Czech Republic and Slovakia formed Czechoslovakia until 1992. So that's what's happening in Slovakia at this moment, folks. I haven't received any word on the condition of the Prime Minister Fico since then. But we'll keep an eye on that news. I'm just going to say it. This is Popper's paradox of tolerance. If you tolerate the intolerant will take over. And Popper said it is you use any means necessary whatsoever to overturn the intolerant. That's what we've seen here, folks. Popper's paradox of tolerance. And there really is no paradox, because if you break social contracts, that ends. That ends. It's unbelievable. Then, oh my God. Speaking of violence, we got to go to this. This is Miranda Nazaro writing for The Hill. This is dated May 15th. Oh boy, let me read this to you. I am going to be mad. Donald Trump responded to the backlash against South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem and her anecdote about killing her dog several years ago, saying in a new interview it was a tough story, but that, quote, we all have bad weeks, end of quote. No, we all have bad weeks, but none of us are dog-killing like Kristi Noem. Dog-killing. Trump told conservative podcast hosts Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, quote, I think she's terrific. A couple of rough stories, there's no question about it. And when explaining the dog story, people hear that, and people from different parts of the country probably feel a bit differently, but that's a tough story. She's had a bad week. We've all had bad weeks. End of quote. Yeah, but again, we haven't been a dog-killing now, have we? Noem, who was floated as a possible vice presidential pick for Trump, came under fire after an excerpt from her new memoir, No Going Back, The Truth on What's Wrong with Politics and How We Move America Forward, revealed how she shot Cricket, her family's nearly 14-month-old hunting dog. Noem, the dog-killing said she shot the German wire-haired pointer on her property after taking it pheasant hunting. She said she hated the dog and claimed it was responsible for attacking a neighbor's chickens and trying to bite her. That's because the dog had more sense than she does. She also wrote of shooting and killing a nasty and mean male goat that smelled and liked to chase her children shortly after killing the dog. So she's a bloodthirsty dog-killing. There you go, folks. She was later slammed by a series of Democratic governors and conservatives for the pet killing. She defended her actions and said the incident and her willingness to share it was a testament to her authenticity and ability to make difficult choices. Yeah, her authenticity of being a dog-killing. Trump seemed to indicate that Noem was not entirely to blame for the book's contents. Oh, brother. So what, she had a ghostwriter? Is that what you're trying to claim there, Donnie? Trump added, quote, until this week she was doing incredibly well and she got hit hard, and sometimes you do books and you have some guy writing a book and you maybe don't read it as carefully, you know? You have ghostwriters too. They help you, and they, in this case, didn't help too much, end of quote. The anecdote, coupled with other recent controversies involving Noem, has hurt her prospects as a potential Trump running mate. One Trump ally told The Hill, quote, she's DOA. Anytime you have to respond more than once to a story, it's not good, end of quote. So even Trump's allies and Trump's aides are saying that she's toast. Put butter on her. She's toast. Yep. Kristi Noem, dog-killing. That's what she's going to be referred to from now on at this show. And if you're wondering what word's getting bleeped, it's one of Carlin's 7 dirty words that rhymes with runt. And she might be the runt of the whole Noem litter, if you want my personal opinion, because she's cuckoo. Cuckoo. Where's my cuckoo? There we go. That's Kristi Noem for you right there. Bye-bye. Your political career is over. Got news for you, honey. Bye-bye. 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 Oh, I'd love to flush her. Go with all the other sewage that belongs in the toilet. Yeah, like Trump, for example, being the definite candidate there. Oh my gosh. Speaking of candidates, it's time for our next story.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh, you know what that music means. It's hammer time. Time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. And we got 2 winners this week. So anytime we have 2 winners, we allow Wade Garrett to chime in.
The double douche. Who is that guy? Gentlemen, Wade Garrett. Holy shit.
Exactly right.
All right, Wade Garrett gives us our first douchebag of the week. Winner number 1 this week, Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker. I've got this story. This is from the Associated Press. This is dated May 15th out of Kansas City, Missouri. Butker is getting attention for comments he made during a commencement address at Benedictine College last weekend, in which he congratulated the women receiving degrees, but then said most were probably more excited to get married and have children. The 3-time Super Bowl champion also railed against President Joe Biden's stance on abortion and his leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as Catholic leaders he said were, quote, pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, end of quote. Butker delivered his roughly 20-minute address Saturday at the Catholic Private Liberal Arts School in Atchison, Kansas, which is located about 60 miles north of Kansas City. Butker, who has made his conservative Catholic beliefs well known, also criticized an article by the Associated Press highlighting a shift toward conservatism in some parts of the Catholic Church. Oh, they did, huh? Well, they're being truthful. Associated Press, nothing but truthful, folks, for 100+ years. If you want true news, you go to the AP. The 28-year-old Butker took aim at Biden's policies, including his response to COVID-19, which the disease has killed nearly 1.2 million people in the U.S., according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Here's what he said, quote, while COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues, things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values and media, all stem from pervasiveness of disorder, end of quote. Yeah, keep spewing your bigotry there, Butker. Why don't you go kick a ball? Butker later addressed the women in the audience, saying that his wife embraced, quote, one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. He continued, quote, I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife Isabel would be the first to say that her life truly started when she started living her vocation as a wife and a mother. End of quote. By the way, the Kansas City Chiefs declined to comment on Butker's commencement address. The 2017 7th-round pick out of Georgia Tech has become the NFL's best kickers. One of the NFL's best kickers, breaking the Chiefs' franchise record with a 62-yard field goal in 2022. Butker helped them win their first Super Bowl in 50 years in 2020 and added a second Lombardi trophy in 2023, and he kicked the field goal that forced overtime in a Super Bowl win over San Francisco in February of this year. It has been an embarrassing offseason for the Chiefs, though. Last month, voters in Jackson County, Missouri, soundly rejected a ballot initiative that would have helped pay for a downtown ballpark for the Royals and an $800 million renovation to Arrowhead Stadium, the home of the Chiefs. Many voters criticized the plan put forward by the Chiefs as catering primarily to VIPs and the wealthy. The same week, wide receiver Rashee Rice turned himself in to Dallas police on multiple charges, including aggravated assault, after he was involved in a high-speed crash that left 4 people with injuries. Rice has acknowledged being the driver of one of the sports cars that was going in excess of 100 miles per hour, and video shows him leaving the scene without providing information or determining whether anyone needed medical attention. Last week, law enforcement officials told the Dallas Morning News that Rice also was suspected of assaulting a person at a downtown nightclub. Dallas police did not name Rice as the suspect in detailing a report to the Associated Press. Chiefs coach Andy Reid said he had spoken to the receiver and the team was letting the legal process play out. So winner number 1, Harrison Butker. Winner number 2 this week is an organizational award. Gannett Newspapers gets the award this week for firing Sarah Leach of the Holland Sentinel. This is an article written by Rick Edmonds of Poynter.com. That's Poynter.com. This is dated May 9th. Sarah Leach, an experienced editor overseeing 26 Gannett community papers in 4 states, was fired via video conference first thing the morning of Monday, April 29th. She said that she was accused of, quote, sharing proprietary information with a reporter for a competing new media company, end of quote. The reporter in question was Rick Edmonds. Her boss, Silas Lyons, next asked, quote, how do you respond, end of quote. Leach recalled. Then, He then added, quote, we have documentary evidence you have been communicating with Poynter, end of quote. No performance issues were raised. Since the dismissal was for cause after 13 years of service, Leach was offered no severance. Lyons' bill of indictment was half right. Leach and Edmonds met 5 years ago at a Poynter seminar and have stayed in touch since. She emailed him on March 29th saying, quote, things are a lot worse than people realize, and I'm hoping people are telling you about it. I can't speak on the record, but I'll tell you what I know, end of quote. The rest of the exchanges between the two were by phone or through her private email. Lyons did not say how the company identified her as a source. As best Leach and Edmonds can figure, they must have tapped into her office email. She said, quote, that's the only way I can think of that they could have known, end of quote. The firing took place while Edmonds was still reporting the story 2 days before Poynter published it. Leach published her own statement Thursday afternoon. I'm going to try and get that to you here, folks, if I can. Here's what Sarah Leach wrote. Hi, everyone. Most of you know something happened with me and the Sentinel. This is me confirming that Gannett made the unfortunate decision to fire me April 29th. I was accused of sharing proprietary information with an outside competing media company. In actuality, I complained to a colleague at Poynter, a nonprofit media institute and newsroom that provides fact-checking, media literacy, and journalism ethics training to citizens and journalists that were in many ways and at many times given assurances from my former company that resources were coming, that we would prioritize local journalism, and if I just held on, it would be okay. But it's not okay, guys. It hasn't been okay for a while. The brutal fact is there's a crisis in journalism, specifically community papers the size of Holland, one that corporate media companies don't have a clear answer on how to address. I'm not bitter toward my former employer. It's not Gannett's fault. In many ways, it's just the natural byproduct of media conglomerates owning publications in major metropolitan areas with hundreds of thousands of people, and papers in much smaller towns who need local journalism just as much. It's a mixed business model that can't work under a single strategy. Investing in small community newspapers doesn't yield revenue and growth like a large metro newsroom. That's because community papers aren't intended for maximum profit and growth. They're meant to serve their communities with reliable information so residents can make informed choices. I love the Holland Sentinel and the community it serves. I gave 14 years of my life to it, and I'm proud of each and every staff member present and past. It was a great honor to hold such an important role, and I want to make it clear that I wholeheartedly support the reporters and editors who remain there. They are my friends and are incredibly skilled journalists who put their hearts and souls into bringing readers important information about the world around them. I will continue to subscribe and read because I value their work. To the community members and fellow journalists who have reached out in recent days, thank you. Your kindness and messages of support mean more to me than I could ever say. I'll be okay. I'm smart and strong, and I have a lot of gas left in the tank. To that end, I am shoring up several freelance agreements with local, state, and national media outlets to keep doing what I love. I also plan to see through the commitment I made to you in January 2023. I will continue to report on Ottawa County politics through the end of the year, either through different media platforms, more to come when I can say more, and through my own Substack, which you can find substack.com/@Sentinel Leach. Back to my earlier point, this isn't about me. This is about access to information so you can decide for yourselves who your representative government will be and what laws, policies, and decisions you want them to make. Let's use this moment as a catalyst for a critical conversation about local media outlets and the audiences they serve. There has been an unprecedented loss of journalists and community newspapers across the country, and news deserts are growing larger and more numerous. Lack of access to quality information can lead to disastrous consequences, including the very real likelihood of government corruption. Journalists aren't the answer, we're the bridge. As I said, quote, democracies rest on the ability of the general public to hold their elected officials accountable, but what happens when a large segment of voters knows very little about today's policy debates or even the basic workings of American government, end of quote. I think we all have a little bit more perspective on this in Ottawa County 2024. I will end this on a positive note because that's how I feel. Hopeful. I've had great conversations with community stakeholders on potential solutions to reducing barriers to quality information. I will continue to do all I can to serve up accurate reporting and analysis for all audiences I might be working for in the future. This isn't a 30, a code used by print journalists back in the day to indicate the end of a story. This is see you online and on the airwaves. With gratitude, Sarah. And by the way, she has already been reached out to by several news outlets about coming to work for them. So I'm hoping that Sarah, who, by the way, is a single mother of 3, will definitely land on her feet. As far as Gannett goes, I wish they would land in the toilet and get flushed, because that's what they deserve. This is what happens when you have large corporate outlets buying up multiple newspapers across the country. You know, it used to be that you could only own one major newspaper. That was it. Then those regulations went away. There used to be the 6-6-12 rule in broadcasting. 6 television stations, 6 AMs, or 6 FMs and 12 AMs across the country. And no AM and FM could be in the same market. Or actually, you couldn't own TV and radio in the same market. That's why Wood TV had to split off from Wood Radio back in 1972 and had to sell the TV station to Time Life because of that regulation. That's when Wood TV became WOTV. Just a little history for you folks. And then the media ownership caps went away because the FCC said, oh, we need to have more ownership, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what more ownership does? When you have big companies owning multiple outlets, you get the same message everywhere. We proved that with Sinclair Broadcasting years ago. Now you get the same message from them no matter where you go. It's disgusting. And let's go ahead and wrap up this segment. So to Harrison Butker and Gannett Newspapers, y'all are scumbags, and we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag!
That's right. Especially Gannett. Hey, they're a bunch of corporate-owned sycophants. And I'm sorry, newspapers need to be broken up in this country. The ownership of newspapers, the ownership of all media needs to be broken up. The 6-6-12 rule needs to come back. And soon. We lack a diversity of voices because of all this ownership. We really have. And people have forgotten this. Oh, boy. Speaking of Sarah Leach, she wrote this great article for the Michigan Advance. This is published on May 15th. Want to read this to you. As voters across Michigan see a likely rematch between President Joe Biden and Donald Trump, national politics have trickled down to the local level. But which way will voters sway in a historically pivotal swing state? By the way, she refers to Trump as former president. We don't do that on this show. 2 recent local level recall elections may be the bellwether on what's in store for the August 6th primary and the November 5th general election. In Delta County, Michigan, located in the Upper Peninsula, 3 county commissioners were recalled on a 5-member board on May 6th by wide margins. Myra Crosdell, Kelly Van Ginhoven, and Matthew Jensen defeated Commissioners Robert Barron, David Moyle, and Robert Peterson by more than 40-point margins, respectively. The former incumbents abruptly fired County Administrator Emily DeSalvo in February of 2023 after she openly criticized the board for unethical and disrespectful behavior after the elimination of the Ethics Committee. At the board's February 7th meeting, DeSalvo said, quote, "I will not be silent if I witness unethical behavior, so stop behaving in a manner which disrespects the office you hold in the community that you serve," end of quote. She was fired shortly after her comments in that meeting. That prompted the formation of the Delta County Citizens for Ethical Leadership, which became the driving force behind the recall efforts, creating the petitions and gathering the signatures needed to make the election happen. A similar storyline in West Michigan's Ottawa County unfolded May 6 when County Commissioner Lucy Ebel, a member of the far-right fundamentalist group Ottawa Impact, was recalled, losing to Democrat Chris Kleingens by a 20-point margin. Since taking office in January 2023, Ottawa Impact commissioners have pushed through a series of controversial decisions resulting in 5 lawsuits over 14 months against the county. The decisions including closing the county's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, changing the county's motto, hiring a far-right legal firm as corporation counsel, and firing Administrator John Shea and replacing him with Republican former congressional candidate John Gibbs, who now has also been fired. The OI majority on the board also attempted to demote and then fire the county health officer who sued in February 2023, kicking off a year-long legal saga that ended earlier this year with the officer remaining in her role. The other lawsuits that remain ongoing have alleged religious discrimination over county meeting invocations, age discrimination over a controversial executive aide hire, allegations of Open Meetings Act violations, and a wrongful termination from Gibbs, who was fired February 29th. Michigan's Attorney General Dana Nessel, a Democrat, investigated the board's January 3rd, 2023 meeting for Open Meetings Act violation allegations. 6 weeks later, she said although the incoming OI commissioners didn't violate the OMA when they had met and made decisions prior to being sworn into office, they certainly, quote, violated the spirit, end of quote, of the statute. Election officials say the recall elections are evidence of an engaged electorate. Barb Byram, Ingham County clerk and former Democratic state representative, said, quote, "What Ottawa and Delta counties tell me is that we are a far more moderate electorate than ever before," end of quote. She said in many ways the early election results are the byproduct of the Tea Party that sprang up after President Barack Obama was elected in 2008 and Trump's influences on politics. She said, quote, "In 2010 to 2016, we saw the right-wing uprising, and now we're really seeing an engaged moderate electorate exercising the right to vote. I think we're seeing the pendulum swing back. Voters are currently being faced with the reality of another Trump presidency, and after the Dobbs decision and losing rights, voters seem to have woken up," end of quote. By the way, the Dobbs decision was the one that overturned Roe versus Wade. She continued, quote, "They were a very sleepy, moderate electorate. They've gotten complacent after electing President Barack Obama, and they have woken up again, and they are informed, and they are exercising their rights to vote," end of quote. Byram pointed at several reforms approved in recent years that increased access to voting. Proposal 3 of 2018, which won 67% approval from voters, allows for no reason absentee voting in Michigan and restored straight party voting on ballots, a choice the previous GOP-controlled legislature took away. Proposal 2 of 2022 allows for early in-person voting and passed with 60% support. Byram said, quote, "Voters had been wanting and election officials had been asking for reforms, and the voters took it upon themselves to open up the ballot box and increase access to exercising one's right to vote. And now it's easier to exercise your right to vote in Michigan than ever before with maintaining that safety and security of the vote," end of quote. More than 1.8 million Michiganders voted in the 2024 Democratic and Republican primary, making up around 22% of registered voters statewide. A significant portion of the vote seemed to come from early voting in the state, as the Secretary of State announced ahead of the February 27th primary that more than 1 million Michigan voters had already cast their ballots. Byram said she's not hung up on the low percentage turnouts because overall voter registration and turnout numbers are increasing. She said, quote, Each year, turnout has been higher in terms of actual votes cast. Now the percentage may not be a tie now that we have pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds, so the denominator's getting bigger, but overall votes cast has been increasing, end of quote. With the May election results, however, came more claims that election results can't be trusted. Despite Ottawa Impact supporters taking to social media claiming election interference and fraud helped Clinton's win, no formal complaints have been brought to his office's attention. That's according to Ottawa County Clerk Justin Roebuck, who is a Republican. Roebuck said, quote, "We do all these checks and balances to ensure the accuracy and integrity of an election, but then we also give our voters the benefit of the doubt, and no one has brought a single claim to us of any sort of wrongdoing or illegal activity in the election process." End of quote. Roebuck says it's unfortunate that calls of election interference are on the rise as checks and balances are better than ever. Quote, "I think what truly bothers me is when my voters essentially are accused of wrongdoing baselessly by individuals with no data or no set of facts to back that up. I actually get pretty protective of that." End of quote. Byram agreed, saying election staff in all areas of the state are ensuring fair and accurate processes. Of the claims of fraud, she said, quote, "What it does is erode trust in the process. It attacks our democracy, and it is not helpful at all. I remember a time where there was a peaceful transition of power. I remember the losing candidate would call the winning candidate and concede. I remember a time of civility and great competition. That's changed now, and all we can do is keep running safe and secure elections, and we will regain the public's trust." End of quote. She added that luckily the state's electorate is, quote, "more informed than ever before." End of quote. She added this, quote, "Voters now have more time to vote with absentee ballots, and they're not making a one-day decision. They're taking their time, they're doing the research, and they're paying attention to what their elected officials are doing or not doing." End of quote. So that's some great news there from Sarah Leach. I didn't know about the Delta County election. That's wonderful. Get rid of all the right-wingers. Please, vote them out. Put them back in the unemployment line. They deserve it. All right, let's get to our next story here. This is Michael R. Sizak, Jill Colvin, Eric Tucker, and Jake Offenhartz writing for the Associated Press. This is dated May 13th out of New York City. Yes, time to talk about the hush money trial. Donald Trump was intimately involved with all aspects of a scheme to stifle stories about sex that threatened to torpedo his 2016, his former lawyer said Monday in matter-of-fact testimony that went to the heart of Trump's hush money trial. Michael Cohen, Trump's fixer turned foe, and the prosecution's star witness in a case now entering its final pivotal stretch, said, quote, "Everything required Mr. Trump's sign-off," end of quote. In hours of highly anticipated testimony, Cohen placed Trump at the center of the hush money plot, saying the then candidate had promised to reimburse the lawyer for the money he fronted and was constantly updated about behind-the-scenes efforts to bury stories feared to be harmful to the campaign. Cohen quoted Trump as telling him this, quote, "We need to stop this from getting out," end of quote. That's in reference to porn actor Stormy Daniels' account of a sexual encounter with Trump a decade earlier. The then candidate was especially anxious about how the story would affect his standing with female voters. A similar episode occurred when Cohen alerted Trump that a Playboy model was alleging that she and Trump had an extramarital affair. Cohen's message to Trump was, quote, "Make sure it doesn't get released," end of quote. I believe that's Trump's message to Cohen. The woman, Karen McDougal, was paid $150,000 in an arrangement that was made after Trump received, quote, "a complete and total update on everything that transpired," end of quote. Cohen testified, quote, "What I was doing at the direction of and benefit of Mr. Trump," end of quote. Trump has pleaded not guilty and denied having sexual encounters with the two women. By the way, Karen McDougal has ties to the southwest Michigan area. She grew up in the area around St. Joseph, Benton Harbor. And we need to get Jack Prince on the show. Jack Prince apparently knew her when she was a student in school down there. Cohen is by far the prosecution's most important witness, and though his testimony lacked the electricity that defined Daniels' turn on the stand last week, he nonetheless linked Trump directly to the payments and helped illuminate some of the drier evidence, such as text messages and phone logs the jurors had previously seen. The testimony of a witness with such intimate knowledge of Trump's activities could heighten the legal exposure of the presumptive Republican presidential nominee if jurors deem him sufficiently credible. But prosecutors' reliance on a witness with such a checkered past, Cohen pleaded guilty to federal charges related to the payments, also carries sizable risk with a jury and could be a boon to Trump politically as he fundraises off his legal woes and paints the case as the product of a tainted criminal justice system. So the criminal justice system is tainted, elections are tainted, it's all tainted. Bullshit! The men once so close that Cohen boasted that he would take a bullet for Trump had no visible interaction inside the courtroom. The sedate atmosphere was a marked contrast from their last courtroom face-off when Trump walked out of the courtroom in October after his lawyer finished questioning Cohen during his civil fraud trial. This time around, Trump sat at the defense table with his eyes closed for long stretches of testimony as Cohen recounted his decade-long career as a senior Trump Organization executive, doing work that by his own admission sometimes involved lying and bullying others on his boss's behalf. Jurors had previously heard from others about the tabloid industry practice of catch and kill, in which rights to a story are purchased so that it can then be quashed. But Cohen's testimony, which continues Tuesday, is crucial to prosecutors because of his direct communication with the then candidate about embarrassing stories he was scrambling to suppress. Cohen also matters because the reimbursements he received from a $130,000 hush money payment to Daniels, which prosecutors say was meant to buy her silence in advance of the election, formed the basis of 34 felony counts charging Trump with falsifying business records. Prosecutors say the reimbursements were logged falsely as legal expenses to conceal the payment's true purpose. Defense lawyers said the payments to Cohen were properly categorized as legal expenses. Under questioning from a prosecutor, Cohen detailed the steps he took to mask the payments. When he opened a bank account to pay Daniels, an action he said he told Trump he was taking, he told the bank it was for a new limited liability corporation but withheld the actual purpose. He said that he's not sure if the bank would have opened the account if they knew that it was to, quote, pay off an adult film star for a non-disclosure agreement, end of quote. To establish Trump's familiarity with the payments, Cohen told the jury that Trump had promised to reimburse him. The two men even discussed with Alan Weisselberg, a former Trump Organization chief financial officer, how the reimbursements would be paid as legal services over monthly installments, Cohen testified. And though Trump's lawyers have said he acted to protect his family from salacious stories, Cohen described Trump as preoccupied instead by the impact they would have on the campaign. He said Trump even sought to delay finalizing the Daniels transaction until after the election day so he wouldn't have to pay her. Cohen testified that to Trump, quote, because after the election it wouldn't matter, end of quote. Cohen also gave jurors an insider account of his negotiations with David Pecker, the then publisher of the National Enquirer, who was such a close Trump ally that Pecker told Cohen his publication maintained a file drawer or a locked drawer where files related to Trump were kept. That effort took on an added urgency following the October 2016 disclosure of an Access Hollywood recording in which Trump was heard boasting about grabbing women sexually. You know, you can grab them by the you can do anything you want. The Daniels payment was finalized several weeks after that revelation, but Monday's testimony also centered on a deal earlier that fall with McDougal. Cohen testified that he went to Trump immediately after the National Enquirer alerted him to a story about the alleged McDougal affair. He said that Trump told him, quote, make sure it doesn't get released, end of quote. Trump checked in with Pecker about the matter, asking him how things were going with it, according to Cohen. Cohen testified that Pecker responded, quote, we have this under control and we'll take care of this, end of quote. Cohen also said he was with Trump as Trump spoke to Pecker on a speakerphone in his Trump Tower office. Cohen said, quote, David had stated that it's going to cost him $150,000 to control the story, end of quote. He quoted Trump as saying, quote, no problem, I will take care of it, end of quote, which Cohen interpreted to mean that the payment would be reimbursed. To lay the foundation that the deals were done with Trump's endorsement, prosecutors elicited testimony from Cohen designed to show Trump as a hands-on manager. Acting on Trump's behalf, Cohen said he sometimes lied and bullied others, including reporters. Cohen testified, quote, when he would task you with something, he would then say, keep me informed, let me know what's going on, end of quote. He said that was especially true, quote, if there was a matter that was troubling to him, end of quote. Defense lawyers have teed up a bruising cross-examination of Cohen, telling jurors during opening statements that he's an admitted liar with, quote, an obsession to get President Trump, end of quote. Yeah. Prosecutors aim to blunt those attacks by acknowledging Cohen's past crimes to jurors and by relying on witnesses whose accounts they hope will buttress Cohen's testimony. They include a lawyer who negotiated the hush money payments on behalf of Daniels and McDougal, as well as Pecker and Daniels. After Cohen's home and office were raided by the FBI in 2018, Trump showered him with affection on social media and predicted that Cohen would not flip. Months later, Cohen did exactly that, pleading guilty to federal campaign finance charges. Besides pleading guilty to the hush money payments, Cohen later admitted lying to Congress about a Moscow real estate project that he had pursued on Trump's behalf during the heat of the 2016 campaign. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, but spent much of it in home confinement. So there you go, folks. We'll continue following the Trump hush money trial. One final story we want to get to. This is Sylvan Lane writing for The Hill. This is dated May 15th. So for those of you that want to continue saying that, oh, Biden's killing the economy, Biden's doing this, I've got this news for you. Again, from The Hill. Each of the major U.S. stock indexes closed Wednesday at record highs after new federal data showed inflation slowing down. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500 Index, and the NASDAQ Composite all rallied Wednesday after the Labor Department reported inflation falling to a 3.4% annual rate in April after a 0.3% monthly increase in prices. That is according to the Consumer Price Index. The Dow rose roughly 350 points Wednesday to close at 39,908, a gain of 0.9%. The S&P rose 1.2%, the NASDAQ climbed 1.4%. The slowdown in price gains is welcome news to Wall Street after several months of higher-than-expected inflation. Federal Reserve officials had expected to cut interest rates as soon as this spring, according to projections released in December, but held off as both job gains and inflation came in hot. If inflation continues to fall, the Fed could be inclined to cut interest rates and loosen up its foot on the brake of the economy. Lower interest rates tend to stimulate the stock market as companies spend less money on debt costs and consumers have more money to spend. By the way, let me add, grocery prices are also down across the board for the first time in a long time. So more great news. Thank you, Joe Biden. That's it for this week. I'm Darren Gibson. Please support independent media, the First Amendment, and most definitely a woman's right to choose.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.